I thought today I would share with you something that I get asked all the time, a very requested topic, which is a more limited palette. I get questions all the time which colors I would choose for a smaller palette, and I always hesitate answering because I really feel that it is a decision that you should make for yourself. I think there's also important distinction that we should make, which is between a versatile palette or the most versatile palette and a good enough palette that is versatile but also reflects your color sense. And this is what this is. So I want you to understand that. I'm not saying that this is the most versatile palette. It's not. But for me, it's versatile enough to pretty much get me any color that I love. And then there are several colors on the color wheel that I never use, never mix, never want, and I don't need them in my palette. And so I will explain to you the logic behind picking each and every color for my limited palette. And I'm doing a 12 color palette with some honorable mentions. But so I will explain to you why I included this color, and I hope that this can help you create your own palette with either, of course, you are always welcome to choose the same colors as I choose if you have a color sense that is similar to mine. But the idea here is, for example, if I tell you that this is my choice for a primary yellow, a bright, transparent yellow that gives you a lot of versatility, if you are more into, you know, something like lemon yellow, then you can absolutely replace my choice with a lemon yellow. It kind of ticks many of those boxes. Obviously, the colors you can create with a lemon yellow are different than the colors you can create with Nickel Azo Yellow, which is my choice for my primary yellow. But if you're aware of that, it'll just help you make better decisions and just learn to, you know, stretch your palette, but still keep it true to your style. I don't believe that there is such a thing as a must-have color. I've talked about this many times in the past. My color philosophy or color palette is a lot more open than many I have heard and seen before. And so I think as long as you have a good understanding of color theory and you understand what you can't do with the colors in your palette and what you can do with them, I think, you know, you can exclude any color from your palette. All the supplies will be listed below. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone that purchased my stamps, and I'll talk about this in a second, about the page that I'm using. So thank you. The watercolor workbook stamp set, the first one, and the prismatic watercolors, they are both in stock with kind of a limited quantity. I ordered a lot more and they sold really fast, which makes me very happy. But I'm telling you, I won't be doing a restock until end of September or October at the very earliest. And so if you want your set, get it now. And as of filming this video, there was one set left of the Sketchbook Essentials stamp set. So this one was a big hit with this restock because I ordered the same amounts from all three sets, and I completely understand why. It's probably the most fun of the three. But yeah, there's only one set left, and maybe till this video comes up, that will be gone. But if you want these, order them now and write me if you haven't been able to get them, so that I have a good idea of, you know, how many I should order for the next time. Okay, now this is actually a part of my printables. So if you missed out on the stamps, or if you prefer to work with printables, which, you know, you can print as many times as you want, you don't have to like stamp, you don't have to worry about, you know, messing up your stamped images, you can purchase my printables. And there are 3 sets sold separately, so you can pick and choose which ones you like. The first one is focused on swatching your watercolors. The second one is focused on mixing your watercolors, so you get all kinds of like fun possibilities. The swatching one, I like it. I'll show you my favorite page probably. It's the tubes. So these are based or include some of the images in the stamps, but just in a different format. And then the last set of printables is focused on color stories, curating your palettes, and this is, you can print out also a cover if you want, like a pretty colorful cover. And then there are all kinds of different formats inside, and I'm going with the 12 on this page. The 12 color palette. And yeah, so let's get started. The first color I chose is Buff Titanium, and mine is from Daniel Smith, but every brand makes this and they're pretty comparable in my opinion. So I would just look for something, you know, that you have that is more local to you, and I'll use this opportunity to color this. The reason for picking this color, Buff Titanium can really kind of muddy your colors in a good way, in my opinion, when I want that effect, of course. And it's just lovely. I think especially if you're doing something like landscapes or cityscapes, it can add that earthiness and a bit more like make your paint a little bit more substantial with the opacity, because it is a opaque or semi-opaque paint. And I really like it. I love it as it is. I think it's beautiful. It has like this, you know, a Buff Titanium look to it, like this unbleached color. And of course in mixtures. A replacement for this, I would consider white. If you're more into pastels and you don't want like to add this, you know, kind of like a beigey color, or something like Daniel Smith has a gray titanium, which is just more gray. So if you prefer that shade, those two I would consider as replacements to this color. My personal choice for a light, semi-opaque color in my palette is Buff Titanium. If you're only into saturated or transparent watercolors, or both of them, then you probably don't need something like this in your palette. Okay, next we have my choice for a primary yellow, and this is Nickel Azo Yellow. This is a very, very earthy yellow, and I have the Daniel Smith version. Other companies also make this color. So, you know, if you're not in the US, you can definitely look for maybe something more local to you. I will mention other colors when we move on that I think are made by Daniel Smith and I think are worth the splurge, because other companies don't really make something like this. But Nickel Azo Yellow and Buff Titanium is not are not on that list. They are beautiful. The Daniel Smith version is beautiful. If you're in the US, definitely, you know, that's a great option. But outside of the US, it's just, you know, you pay for import taxes and all those things. So I really, in these cases, I would consider a different brand that is more local to you. Okay, so I do recommend that every limited palette should include some sort of yellow, because obviously you can mix, you know, oranges, greens, or even neutrals with the other colors in your palette. I chose Nickel Azo Yellow because I just love that yellow. I have used other yellows in the past. I often use quinacridone gold instead of Nickel Azo Yellow, so that's one honorable mention. But it's just very, very orangey, quinacridone gold, and most times I find that I could use like a little bit a more yellow color. Other options I would consider here would be a cadmium yellow, if you prefer that. Indian yellow is a color I used for a long, long time. New Gamboge, also very, very orangey, but, you know, a nice option. Lemon yellow, if you prefer those cooler yellows. But yeah, definitely have a yellow in your palette. Although I'm sure that there are some wonderful artists that never use yellow and it works for them. So if you hate yellow, feel free to leave it out of your palette. Oh, I should also probably add my other honorable mention here, which is Naples yellow, a color I use very, very often. I would actually also consider this instead of buff titanium. If you're really not into like beigey colors, the Naples yellow is a great option also for something that is very opaque and light. And it makes beautiful, beautiful colors with my choice of pink, which we'll get to. So, yellow. Moving on to a color that is completely, I would say, like a color preference choice and not a versatility choice. Obviously, if you have yellow and pink in your palette, you can mix orange, but I found that this color, Naples Yellow Red or Reddish from Lukas, it's a convenient color for me that I just adore, and I find it quite unique, and it has a little bit of opacity to it, and it just creates the most beautiful mixes with my pinks. I usually use bright pinks in my paintings, and this just works, and I love this color. I've been using it pretty much every time I sit down and paint. Maybe I'll fall out of love with it, but this one I would definitely consider like a style color preference choice for me. If you're not into this particular color, it's definitely, you know, not a must. Well, none of these colors are, but hopefully you know what I mean. Okay, moving on to my pink, and I think that every palette, if you want it to be somewhat versatile, should include some sort of a pink or red primary color. I hardly ever use red, and when I do, it's usually in addition to a pink, so I don't feel the need to include a pink in my, a red in my palette, sorry. But if you don't like pink, then I would, you know, replace this with any shade of gray or a different pink that you like. Other pinks that I like, oh wait, did I say this is Bright Rose by Holbein? I love this color. It is fugitive, it's like a fluorescent pigment, but I have done my own light fast testing, meaning I painted a swatch on a piece of paper, I hung it on my window for several months, and my window gets direct sunlight. You know, during the summer it was hanging for I think 7 months on my window, and then I kept the other swatch in my drawer, and after something like 7 months I hardly noticed a difference. So I feel comfortable using this pigment, and you can make your own decisions. Another option would be something like Quinacridone Rose. I'll put it next to it. I like the Daniel Smith one. It's the most vibrant one I have found, and still next to my Bright Rose, it's a little bit sad. But again, having this kind of color in your palette gives you a lot of versatility. I just love this as it is, and in mixtures with pretty much any of the other colors in my palette. But yeah, if you hate pink, you never use pink, even if, you know, you don't like red, you never use red, feel free to leave it out. Moving on, Cobalt Violet. So Cobalt Violet is my precious. I have here, I'm swatching for you the Winsor & Newton version, which in my opinion is the best. And Cobalt Violet is a color, I put it in my palette because I love this color. Obviously, you can mix violets with, you know, a pink and a blue, I have found that you can't really duplicate this color. It has granulation, like this, you know, just the pigment of Cobalt Violet. It has this violet granulation, which you won't get if you mix other colors. If you mix a pink and something like French Ultramarine, you can get a very pretty violet that might have like a nice, let's try, that might have the nice granulation from Ultramarine Blue or French Ultramarine, but it's just not going to look the same. So it might be very similar, but it'll never look exactly the same. So you can see this is actually pretty close. Well done me. Could probably add a touch more pink to it, but wow, I did a good job. But yeah, Cobalt Violet just looks different. I love it. I use it in most of my paintings probably. I love how it mixes with Naples Yellow, which I actually didn't include here, but you can also create beautiful mixtures with all of these three. So this is a color you absolutely don't need for versatility in your palette. I just love it, and I think it is unique, and I think you can't really mix it. Moving on to my choice of a blue. If you want versatility, including a blue in your palette will definitely give you that. And I chose French Ultramarine. It's a more reddish blue than, say, phthalo blue. It is granulating, which is kind of a deal breaker in my book. If my blue is not granulating, it's a deal breaker and it won't be my only blue. And I just love the tone of it. I love how it looks. I love the colors I can mix when I mix it with my yellows. It gives me beautiful greens. And I have to say, while I love French Ultramarine and use it in many of my paintings, I usually use it in small doses. I paint mostly florals, some, you know, beach scenes, some abstracts, and most of the time I have to use it, but it's kind of like a pop of color for me. At least that's how I feel like in recent, I don't know, months or, I don't know, year or two. But yeah, it's a beautiful color that I would want to have in every single palette of mine. Moving on to Cobalt Teal. I messed up the order, if you can read. So this is the slot for Cobalt Teal. And Cobalt Teal is another color that I use very carefully, not in large amounts. And it's very hard, almost impossible to mix. And I love it. I love it as a pop of color. I love also mixing greens with it. I don't use it a lot, but I use it very often. So I don't use a lot of it, but very often. And I just love it. I think it's unique, as I said. If you don't like this color, I don't think it will add anything to your palette that, you know, a different choice of color that you do like will. So that's just my personal taste. Okay, now my greens are quite unique, I would say. And could probably mix one of them, the next one, not this one, with the colors that I have or something similar. But this one, the the Cascade Green, this is a color that I really enjoy using and I find it to be quite unique. This is by Daniel Smith, and wow, I'm really impressed with my violet here. This is by Daniel Smith, Cascade Green, and it's actually more of a turquoise. I find it to be very similar if you have it in your palette, Amazonite Genuine, but I like the Cascade Green more. I actually have Amazonite Genuine here in my palette in one of the wells, and I probably the next time I move things around I will remove it because it doesn't have that beautiful separation that Cascade Green does. Now, Amazonite Genuine, it's made from, you know, like precious stones. And then Cascade Green is a mixture of several pigments. So if that is something that is important to you, maybe you would prefer a color like Amazonite Genuine. But I personally just like Cascade Green better. I like how it looks. I like the separation. I like the interesting mixtures that I can get with it when I mix it with my yellows, with my pinks, or just at the end of my painting or in the middle when I'm just mixing a bunch of colors to create interesting neutrals. I love using it with my bright rose, with my pink, when I'm painting florals. And so this color, I wouldn't say it adds a ton of versatility, but it is very unique and I personally love it. And I haven't really found anything similar from another brand. So if you have any suggestions, by all means, leave them below. I'm sure that myself and other viewers would love to know. But this is a color I would say, you know, spend your money if you don't mind colors that have several pigments in them, and splurge for the Daniel Smith color just because it's so unique. The next one is Olive Green, and this is also by Daniel Smith. There are, I think every brand makes a version of Olive Green. I personally love the Daniel Smith one the most. Just, I find it to be really, really beautiful. Still kind of saturated, but also earthy, and it has like depth to it. It's not just like this highlighter, you know, green gold color that some other colors look like. So I love this color. I use it probably in every floral that I paint. I use it. I mix it with my darks. I mix it with my pinks. I mix it with neutrals. Really, really love it. It granulates. I would consider having a green in your palette that you like, either a convenience color, because there's nothing wrong with, you know, having something that saves you time and gets you to the fun parts faster, or something more unique like Cascade Green that you can't very easily mix. I would consider including that in your palette if, you know, you like using greens. Oopsie. Well, I'm not going to mess with it. I'll let it flow. Other greens that I like, that I want to mention them because maybe you're hunting for something more, like for something interesting, is Undersea Green from Daniel Smith is also very lovely and, you know, granulating and interesting. I don't like any of like Spring Green, May Green, Phthalo Green. Those colors do nothing for me. And I'm sure that, you know, they can do their own thing and you can mix them and whatever, but I never found the need to have them. And I try to include in my palette colors that I love in their pure form and also in mixtures. Rarely do I use colors only in mixtures. So that's just me. Okay, moving on to a few necessities. Okay, so I decided to include one kind of neutral color. If you know your color theory and you have some good primary colors or some good complementary colors in your palette, you can mix neutrals or semi-neutrals without actually having to have a neutral color on your palette. But I chose to include this color because it's so special. In general, 90% of the time, most of the time, I mix my own neutrals from the colors that you see here that are in my painting. But this one is so unique that I just really, really love it, and I can't mix something like this. And so I decided to include it just to show you, you know, the kind of options that you have, and show you that you don't have to stay in that place where most of us, if not all of us, start with, you know, those basic palettes that you will have your neutrals as like Payne's Gray, or, you know, more natural colors, or like earth tones. Earth tones is what I wanted to say. Like raw umber, you know, those classical colors that you get in many basic sets when you buy them. There is nothing wrong about those colors. They work wonderfully for many, many painters that create beautiful artwork. Personally, I don't like them. I don't like most of the, you know, siennas, the umbers, the grays. I don't like them, so I don't need them in my palette, and that is totally okay. You know, I want you to feel free to make your color choices. So this is Hematite Violet Genuine, or Violet Hematite Genuine, whatever, from Daniel Smith. And I've talked about this color many, many times in the past. And as you can see, it is very, very unique. It has sort of like a base color that is somewhere between peach and pink and brown, that is light and beautiful. And then it has that almost black, I would say, granulation. It is beautiful and complex, and it's beautiful in its pure form, and then it also does a lot of fun stuff when you start mixing it with other colors. You should explore that, and I encourage you to do so. So this is my choice for kind of an earth tone neutral. Moving on to the last two colors, which are my choices for dark colors. You absolutely, you know, I never say always, but this time I will. You should always have a dark color in your palette. I mean, that's also not true, because there are some amazing artists that create art in like pastel colors or something like that. But I would say 99% of the time, to make a successful painting, you should have a color that has a darker value. This doesn't have to be black or gray, but it should have a darker value. And in my colors that I already have here, French Ultramarine is pretty dark. Cascade Green can also get dark, but it also gets very opaque when you use it with a heavy hand, and I'm not a huge fan of that. Bright Rose is probably darker than you would imagine. Reds and pinks have a darker value than we realize, but they're not like very, very dark. So I always recommend including dark colors in your palette. And I chose Moonglow, which is a mixture of 3 pigments from Daniel Smith. There's been much discussion about this, light fast issues and everything. I love this color. I use it all the time, and I think it's unique. I love it in mixtures. I love it with my yellows. It's one of my favorite colors to use. And yeah, again, I want to show you how I curate a more limited palette, but hopefully you can understand how to tweak it to make it your own. So choose a dark color. This will give you versatility, and you can add darker values to your painting, which are many times critical and essential to creating a successful painting. But it doesn't have to be a black. I really like colors that are just very, very muted. So Moonglow is a very, very muted kind of bluish purple with granulation and separation, which is what I love. And then my second choice for a dark color is Zoazite. I would probably say, you know, you can get away with one dark color in your palette, but I do use both of these very, very often. So I wanted to include them just to have a bit more options. But sometimes I would use both of them in a painting, but most of the time it's either this or the other. And Zoazite Genuine is another expensive color from Daniel Smith that I think is worth the investment. It is a very, very muted green with a strong granulation. So if you're painting florals, it's such a beautiful, or I would say also just like, you know, nature, landscapes, treescapes, that sort of thing. Such a beautiful color, has that gorgeous granulation. I would say you could use something like Perline Green. That would kind of tick the same box of a muted dark green. But Perline Green, I can't remember. I used to use it. I can't remember if it granulates or not, but it definitely doesn't granulate as much as Zoazite Genuine. So I love it. I have a tube of it from Daniel Smith, and it's expensive, but for me, it's worth the investment. And other honorable mentions for this category, I would include something like Lunar Black, would also be great, very versatile. That's not that. What I'm painting is Bloodstone, also from Daniel Smith, which is, I don't know, it's like, it's very, very similar to Lunar Black, I would say. It's a granulating, pretty much black. It's very, very neutral color. So Bloodstone, and then I also used for a long time as my dark a color called Dusk Pink from Rembrandt. And you can see here it just looks dark, but it has a pink granulation to it. It's basically a granulating black mixed with some pink. So if you have something like Lunar Black or Oxide Black, you can kind of, and a pink, you can mix your own. I just like the formulation that they got and the exact color, so I used it a lot. And that is my limited color palette. I would probably be very, very happy having these colors. I think probably the one I would miss the most, or the two I would miss the most, would be these two, Naples Yellow and Quinacridone Gold, because I use so much yellow in my paintings. Mostly in mixtures with pinks and violets and blues and every other color, but I always include a pop of yellow. Pretty much can bet money on that I include a pop of yellow. And yeah, so I don't need to paint only with 12 colors, but this would be a wonderful and very, very versatile palette for me. Okie dokie, I hope you enjoy this. I hope this will inspire you to create your own curated palette of 12 colors, or that it will help you kind of find that, you know, capsule color palette, color story that you want. Obviously, the advantage of using a limited number of colors is it's, you know, more economical. You don't have to have like 100 colors on hand. And when you're actually sitting down to paint, it makes that decision process of which colors to use much, much faster when you have limited options. Also, curating a smaller palette is very nice when you're traveling and you only have, or you don't want to carry like a lot with you when weight and space is an issue. So for all these reasons, I think it's great to have a limited palette. And I hope this will inspire you. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so, so much. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you soon in another video. Take care. Bye-bye.